Who is an alpha school parent? We got one, two-ish. We got over here. Okay, amazing. Who is interested in learning more about alpha school? That's literally everybody in the room. Great. Um, Real quick, you probably got 72 to maybe 3,000 emails from me leading up to this event. But again, a quick introduction. Rod Rudy, father of 4, 7, 5, 4, and 3. So I'm very invested in this conversation tonight with Joe, and I couldn't be more excited to have him here. So just real quick on the housekeeping side. Since this room is amazing and every other room pretty much has sound treatment except this one, we're going to keep side conversations to 0 while we're chatting, but we're going to leave ample time for Q&A. Because show of hands real quick, who's got a question for Joe? Yeah, which is pretty much everybody in the room. I love it. And so we'll run for about 30, 45 minutes up here, even though I typically run maybe 20 minutes of fireside chat. Joe was like, no, let's go an hour and then do an hour of Q&A. And then I'll stay even longer to answer everyone's questions. I'm like, you're a legend. I got 4 kids and I go to bed at 8:30. So here are the keys. But without any further ado, I'm going to start the conversation, ask a lot of questions, a lot of personal questions, and then open it up to folks. Does that sound like a fair plan, Joe?
Sounds great.
Amazing. First of all, I have not sold a business, and I haven't sold a business for billions of dollars. Is that fair to say?
Actually, I did not sell the business. So I started a business. It is still a privately run company. I use it like a piggy bank to pay for all this educational stuff. But so 4 years ago, I became principal after decades in software. And when I decided to become principal, I was like, I want to be the most well-funded principal. So I took $1 billion out of it and said, this is my seed to help transform education.
So let me just ask you this, though, because I dream of being in a position like you, where I have a piggy bank of billions of dollars that I can do whatever I want with. I have to ask, why this? You could be doing anything. Why this?
Yeah, a couple different reasons, and I guess the history. Let me go through my history to provide some context, which is I wrote a paper in high school in the 80s on AI. And I had a paragraph in there that said neural nets are decades away. The rest of the paper was around things like expert systems and ontologies, which is old school AI. I then went to Stanford and I was in class with the father of expert systems in AI, as it was known back then, Professor Feigenbaum, who talked about this great product. If you built it, would be very valuable. And I was like, I can't sit in Spanish class anymore. And so I dropped out with my friends and we built it. And our claim to fame in the 90s was we were the first AI product to sell $1 billion. And so that's how I built the software company. And then 4 years ago, when Gen AI came out, I was like, wow, neural nets, they're here. Decades later, we were right. And this, for the first time, education historically has never been scalable. And my view was this will actually make great education scalable to 1 billion kids. And sort of as soon as I realized that, I was like, okay, this is actually what I need to go do. And what and why? What's the why behind why I felt that way? One is my kids were in this amazing school called Alpha, which I always had talked about with McKinsey, who is the founder. It's awesome for us. It's too bad it doesn't scale to anybody else, right? Education's not scalable. And so I was experiencing for my family how awesome it could be. And then second, just a belief that I believe lots of people have, and I don't think I'm special in any way, is, the most important thing for a family or a society is raising the next generation, right? That is our job. And how do we develop kids and raise the next generation? And I believe that right now we are at a time where the first time in 100 years we can do it differently. Right? For 100 years, we've all been in the same system. Your system, your parents, grandparents, it's all been the same. It's all the same across the world. There's a teacher in front of a classroom everywhere. And everybody's gone through the system. It has, to date, it's been as good as we could do, right? We're doing our best with it. But now we have one that can absolutely transform it. And McKinsey's line, which I believe more than anything, is it is the best time in history to be a 5-year-old. And our job is to make sure that's true for every 5-year-old.
So I love that. And that's why I'm very interested. My father-in-law's here. And by the way, a quick story on I'm 45 years old, been dating and married to my wife now for almost 19 years. On our second date, she said, I have 3 non-negotiables. First, Nashville. Second, private school. Third, Catholic. And I was like, dang, second date? This is going to pretty tough. Good job on raising her, Big Frank. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And it's when we've knocked it down, Nashville, private school, and Catholic. The thing that scares me, or I don't know about scares me the most, is we're so, Jonathan Haidt with the Anxious Generation, and I think a lot of folks know that, is we are not pulling any devices in front of our kids, but you're saying, hey, we're going to put devices in front of our kids for 2 hours a day. How do you counter that?
Great. Let me give you half a second on that, and let me see if I can help you on the Catholic thing. So, um,
Please.
so I actually, one of the things I've learned as principal is everybody wants to raise their kids the way they were raised. And so I actually went to Catholic school. And my kids, when Mackenzie started Alpha a dozen years ago, she's like, you got to come to my school. And I'm like, I'm not going to your weird, janky school. That is so weird. Like, no way. My kids are in Catholic school. Even though it wasn't great for me, it was absolutely what they were going to be. And it actually took me 2 years to before I moved my kids to Alpha. And actually, for people in the audience who are interested, is St. Gabriel got out at the end of May, and they were going to go to summer camp a little later. And Mackenzie, who has 2 daughters the same age as mine, convinced them to go to Alpha for a week because it was still in session. And so they went for the week. And they came home at the end of the week and they're like, Dad, we don't want to go to summer camp. We want to go back to Alpha. And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. And that was actually my sign of I needed to go really rethink this. And do I really, this was over a decade ago, do I want to put my kids in a school where literally they love it more than camp?
What's
And
the conversation at the house, out of curiosity?
yeah. And so my wife very much was like, I'm sold, which is,
Why though? Why was she sold and you were still skeptical?
so uh, there was 2 parts to it, which is one, and I believe I came along later, was the kids love school more than going to summer camp. Okay. And they're going to be in here for 12 years. Right. And back to the energy and excitement and just the smile on their face every day, you are like, okay, this is better for them. Now I'm like, how are they going to learn? And what are they doing? And are they going to have skills? Right. And so that was my worry. And that caused me to say, I need to go, not dismiss this as lightly as I had, and really dive in and understand exactly what is it about this school and what will they be experiencing. And so it caused me to dive in deeply. And then when I did, coming out of it, I was like, okay, this is it. Um, and back to the end of the story is my oldest daughter, that was a decade ago. My oldest daughter is a sophomore at Stanford, math, English double major. My youngest one is a senior at Alpha High, and will be joining her sister at Stanford. And so my worry is about, would they learn the academics and would this new thing, ruin them? It turned out to be exactly the opposite.
Can I ask you, early on, like, what were the kind of key milestones for you to say, okay, this is working? Because there's one leap of faith, right? To say, okay, they're having fun. The next one is now they're in school and you're like, man, is there retention there? Or is this just like too much fun, but there's no retention?
Exactly. So Mackenzie started the school with Brian. And so on the first day I sit down with Brian, I'm like, what do I not understand as a parent about education? What are you about to tell me? And he's like, first, your kids must love school. Must. And I'm like, it's sort of like spinach, you hate it sometimes. That's just part of the game, right? When I went through it, you just don't like it. And that's part of what you want to do. He's like, you're totally wrong. And now I can tell you, being principal at Alpha for 4 years, that is actually the most critical thing we can do if we're going to reform education, which is, at Alpha now we have a standard, which is we make a commitment to the students, which is you will love school. And so if we survey our kids every 8 or 10 weeks, and 96% say they love school. We actually, a little over a year ago, added a question because it was too easy. Everybody's saying yes, which is, would you rather go to school or go on vacation? And 46% of our students 3 weeks ago said, I'd rather go to school than go on vacation, right? Back to that standard. Um, so that was the first part. The second thing he said is, your expectations of your kids are too low. And I was like, oh, you don't know me. I'm like Tiger Dad, right? There's no way my expectations are too low. And he's like, they can do so much more than you expect. And that turned out to be completely true. And he's like, just watch. And so the path, and to give you at Alpha, we survey parents as well, 85% of Alpha parents said, I saw my kid in the last 10 weeks do something I thought was impossible for their age. And that we have just put our kids in a system, and we've been in a system where we don't know what they can do. And if you put them in an environment where you can unleash them, it's just unbelievable. And that's why Alpha has such hype and parent references and so much excitement, is because the parents see their kids just doing this amazing things that they thought was impossible, and the kids loving every minute of it.
But is there like a prerequisite of a kid? Is there a make and model of like this kid is going to succeed versus this kid that probably wouldn't succeed in an alpha type of school?
Yeah. And before I answer that, back to your other one, the other thing for me that I really need,
And we'll get to the Catholic thing too.
yeah, and we'll get back the second part of what I needed was, I needed standardized tests. Like, you get to say all the stuff and saying, show me the test scores. And so actually Alpha parents, and to your point on screen time and getting that, 60% of Alpha parents before they come in are like, I'm not really into standardized tests. Right? That's not my thing. And after they come in, I'm like, okay, well, great. Okay, you don't want standardized tests. That's awesome. Well, yeah, just trust me. They're crushing it. And the parents are like, wait, in 2 hours they are? I'm like, oh yeah, totally. Don't worry. And the parents are like, okay, can I have the standardized test? Because I'm not sure I believe you, Joe. I hate to say it. And actually, so actually all our parents love standardized tests. And that's why, we are top 1% in every grade level. We're the top academic performing school in the country on any standardized test, right? We are top 1% and all that. And I needed that as a parent, so that as soon as I got those, and it was occurring in a couple hours a day, I am like, well, I actually don't care what the kid does the rest of the day now, because I'm not worried about the academic side. And then all the life skills and all these projects went from being something that I thought was taking away from traditional academics to being like, wow, no, this is actually now what I want my kid to spend their time on.
Amazing. What's the counter then? What's a straw man to that? If they're scoring in the 1%, somebody like maybe and not to bring up the public education or other schools, what would they be saying to counter Alpha School to say?
Yeah. Yeah, the standard schools,
Because the numbers are the numbers.
No, the
It's a
other
scoreboard.
standard schools aren't going to say anything, because they don't publish their standardized tests because they're embarrassed with the answers. And so they don't ever want a comparison. So most K through 8 schools in the country will not publish their tests. We publish all our we use NWA MAP. There's lots of different ones, but we publish all our results. And if you go to your average private school in this country, they will not do it. And because they don't like the results. Now, here's, if I had to attack it, here's how I attack it, which is, number one, standardized tests is a very limited view of a kid, right? And our answer is, we agree that standardized tests are necessary but not sufficient. That's why we spend half the day on life skill development. We have our life skills curriculum, which is all the skills we all think are critical for us, for our kids to thrive going forward. And so we spend lots of time on that. But on the academic side, we do believe strongly that when you get a 5 on Calculus BC, right, the AP test, you know more than somebody who gets a 1, right? You have better understanding of math when you get a 790 math SAT than a 550 SAT. And so standardized tests are directionally correct, right, on the knowledge. If you care about math knowledge, grammar, if you crush your grammar test, you can write a better sentence than someone who can't. Now, we also think you have to have a robust person is not just defined by their test scores, which is why most of our day is not spent on that.
Can we walk through what the typical day, the 2 hours of AI assisted? Some people may be imagining my kid is just unbridled. They got YouTube up, they got whatever up, and they're just like learning, and they got maybe somebody over their shoulder, which is kind of a scary thought. And then they go out and for 6 hours in the creek and play. Well, what's like the Alpha
So
School model?
let's talk. So back to the how the day goes is you come in and the first 15 minutes are launch, limitless launch, and so you should think Tony Robbins for kids, right? Growth mindset. We are going to get them fired up for the day uh, before they get into the apps. Then in the apps, you're going to spend 25 minutes across the four subjects, right? Reading, math, science, language, reading and writing, and you're going to be in those apps. You get breaks between them, right? 25-minute pomodoros. You get recess, right? So you're in the apps getting breaks between it. But when you're in there for 25 minutes, the instruction is this. Uh, it's called Alpha Time Back. It's our system, and to be clear, it is not an AI chatbot. Chatbots are terrible, just to be clear, and this is the nuanced part about AI, which is chatbots are cheap bots. 90% of kids, if you give them, unmanaged Chromebooks with a chatbot on it, they will not learn, right? Chatbots are built to be cognitive offload, literally take so you don't have to do the work. That is the opposite of what you're trying to do. You are trying to put in K through 8 the 4,000 facts, ideas, and concepts that have historically indicated an educated person, right? And you that's cognitive onload. And so we do not have chat functionality enabled in the morning because even in our environment, and we have heavy, structure around it, the kids use it. When we turn it on and we've tried, they cheat. Um, and
Kids
so
are amazing.
and back to it, and kids are limitless.
They really are.
They are limitless.
The
They
ingenuity of
also
kids.
try to game the system. If you can't put those both thoughts in your head, that they are both limitless and awesome, and they will try to game whatever system you put in and get around it, right? You'll have an ineffective system. Ours understands both. But now in the afternoons, when we're doing all these great life skills, right? So we have, our fifth graders launching a food truck. We tell them if, in the morning, if you're using a chatbot, you're probably cheating. If you're not using it in an afternoon workshop like your food truck, you're probably failing because you are going to need to use AI to give you these skills. And so we have when we talk about some of the ones, but AI, when you're starting to do project-based workshop and things like this, it does give kids superpowers, right? And it's important to be able to train them in how to use it correctly, but that is not the time in the morning to give them a chatbot. And then what is it though? Just to explain, well, what is AI that's not a chatbot? So the reason kids can learn 10 times faster, let's just talk about that because that's going to be your skepticism, is we've actually known for 40 years that kids can learn 2, 5, or 10 times faster. So there's a field, right, at the graduate schools of education, whether it's Northwestern or Stanford or Harvard or Oxford, called learning science and cognitive load theory. There were papers written when I was in high school about how kids can learn this way. One of the seminal papers is Bloom's 2 Sigma, which is literally every kid in America could perform at the top 2%. And there's two elements to it. The problem with all of these papers is they all start with this doesn't work in a teacher in front of a classroom model. And a lot of it is because, so like take Bloom's 2 Sigma, he did a study where he's like, well, if everybody in America was given a personal tutor, they would perform 1 Sigma better. And then if that tutor enforced mastery, right? And mastery being a concept of you actually master the material before you move on. Think athletics, right? Master the basics. No one, if you're losing the ball 15% of the time going down the court, the coach is not like, it's time to work on dunks. He's like, let's work on ball handling. And academics is the same way, which is if you have mastered the material before you move on, your learning speed accelerates. If you only advance after 85% or 70%, as you move up in age grade, your learning slows down because you're spending all your time filling holes. And so with those two concepts, you could do 2 Sigma. No teacher in front of a classroom can do it because everybody's at a different grade level. This is why after COVID, everything fell apart because the grade range of the average school just went, much wider. All of a sudden you had kids years behind, right? And you're like, I'm not equipped to do it. I don't know if we have any college professors, but we have provosts coming in from a lot of universities who are like, we're getting freshmen in, right, who can't do our freshman seminar series. And none of my professors are equipped to remediate them, right? Because they don't have those skills. And if you're an eighth grade teacher and you have a student who needs fourth grade, reading, and it depends on the state, but by law, you have to deliver eighth grade material. The student can't read, right? Giving them eighth grade material doesn't help. You need to go backward. And so what our AI does is it generates personal lessons for every kid. So age grade and knowledge grade are different things. In a standard school system, they're the same. And so we have schools where we have students who are bottom 25%. Bottom 25% in America means if you're in seventh, eighth, or ninth grade, you can't read. You need third grade phonics. You don't know what 7 times 8 is, right? You need multiplication tables. And if you're in a standard eighth grade class, you are not going to learn, right? You are going to be frustrated. You can be told to have grit and growth mindset, right? But it's like giving me an MCAT, right? I don't know the words on the page, right? I need to be rolled back to freshman bio and built up. And so that's where why these, personalized generative lessons. You can't give that eighth grader a chatbot though. That's right. They don't know what lesson to be done. You need to deliver them a generated lesson
That's
where
tailored to them,
tailored
that
exactly
they can then learn from.
that they can learn from. And back to learning science and all these, there's 10,000 papers you can read about it. There's a zone of proximal development, which is kids learn best if you give them material where they get 80 to 85% correct, right? At 99%, right, it's too easy. You're just regurgitating what you know. If you drop below 2/3, every game developer in America will tell you they disengage. We actually have a bunch of guys helping us design the engagement level, which is if you give kids at 80 to 85% and can tailor your lessons and your questions to it, then that is the zone where you will learn 10 times faster, right? And so that's the part for us of when we say there's good AI and bad AI and good screen time and bad screen time. Chatbot's bad, personalized lessons generated at your grade level, not your age level, are good.
A slight tangent, because I can only imagine a story. Let's say you're a parent in eighth grade. You have an eighth grader. You transfer them over to Alpha School, and then they probably take a test to see where they're at. And there's probably been some students that have probably scored in the first or second grade. How do you communicate that to the parent? And then what is the plan for them to get up to speed? Do they stay in eighth grade? Do they go it's not like what's that Adam Sandler movie?
Yes, exactly.
Billy Madison.
Billy Madison.
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly.
We laugh, but it's true. So I'll give you just stats from us. So we had hundreds of kids from high-end $50,000 private schools around the country transfer into our schools last August. And they all take an assessment. What do you know? What do you not know? That is one thing ed tech is very good at, right? Is understanding what you know and what you don't know. And we'll get into sort of why ed tech's failed the last 25 years. We'll throw that out there later. But I get up 2 weeks in, after all the assessments are done, I have a big parent meeting and I'm like, okay, tomorrow you're going to get a report. And before you open it, I just want to tell you, don't freak out, but your kid's behind. And, but don't worry, we will catch them up, right? That's the magic of alpha. And our data points is if you transferred in, the average student who transferred from alpha, from a high-end private school, 2.2 grade levels behind. So if you had straight A's on your transcript, the majority of people were between 1 and 3 years behind. If you had B's, you were between 3 and 7 years behind. And this is one of my themes to parents and about private schools is private schools are lying to you about grades because we have a standard that we went through of what an A, B, C, D meant and an F even, right? And today with grade inflation, they only give out A's and B's. So if you're a teacher, you have to cover all the grades you only have 2 grades. So 1 to 3 and 3 to 7. So, and then depending, for eighth graders, if you take eighth graders, especially because they were in third grade, in COVID years, they're coming in and they cannot write a grammatically correct third grade sentence. that writing, if you look, AI is causing, depending on the subject, different levels of pain. Writing is just a total fiasco, which is kids are just prompting their papers. They do not know how to write a paper. They have not learned how to write a sentence. They have not learned how to write an essay, an outline, right? A sentence, a paragraph, an outline, and an essay. They just haven't learned that. And parents don't realize this usually until one of 2 points. You find out the standardized tests come in with you on an FRQ, a free response question on an AP test. That's sort of the first time your student's having to write. Or second, their college application. And the number of parents who are like, oh my gosh, my student can't write an essay, right? And so those are, writing is one where we tell all the parents, they're all behind, but now here's why you're not going to worry. So we will catch every kid up, and all those kids who are behind are at or above grade level. So all of those ones who joined in August are caught up, right? We're ending the year, so we have all the scores. Now, why? How can that be? How can kids learn 10 times faster? So the average student at Alpha can finish one entire grade level, one subject at one grade level, 4th grade math, right? 7th grade science, in between 20 and 30 hours. That's it. So we all have, in our view, right, there was 180 school days, hour a day, do some homework. So we have a view that a grade level is a couple hundred hours, right? That is not, teacher in front of a classroom model, sure. Our kids do it in 20 to 30 hours. So with 1 hour of homework. So when do you have to do more than 2 hours? When you come in behind, you will do 1 hour of homework to catch up.
Yep.
But when you're 2 grade levels behind, right, you're 40 to 60 hours. You're a couple months of homework, and all of a sudden you're back and you're there. And so for parents, they hear it, they freak out. We're like, don't worry, you'll catch up. In general, in August, when you hear this, you're still freaked out. But
You're calling that private school and suing them.
You can see a lot of parent testimonials. Our parent testimonials very much are, for our info sessions, it's just Alpha parents who stand up and they're like, my kid was 8 years at a $50,000 school and he was 4 years behind and I didn't know it. And then now he's been at Alpha a year and he's caught up. And so the part that gets them through it is their kid loves school. And then they're like, when do I get the standardized test? Which the second you do one in August, right? And then you get another one in January. And so all the new parents are like, when do I get the January test? And because we will. And that's where you get, we publish these where the kids are learning so much.
Do you publish now? Do you open source these tests? Even though I have like 19 pages of notes, I don't have this one.
Yeah.
Like the tests, do you make them public such that any parent here who has like a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, and so on could actually take the test at home, get the results, and be like, holy smokes, we're 2 grades behind?
So for K through 8, we use NWEA map. So we don't make the test because we can't self-grade. So it has to be third party. Otherwise, none of you would trust me. And so NWEA is taken by 10 million kids.
And this is public school as well, does it?
Public school, private school, everybody takes it. You can sign up. Any family can sign up and take it. If you go to a private school, or a lot of private schools actually give it, but they won't give you the results. One of the biggest warning flags of people who move over is after they hear one of our talks, they go ask their school, and the school is very cagey about giving their school results, which creates suspicion.
And you have to take this test every year?
At Alpha or at
other schools?
It's other schools use it, and they do take it every year.
Okay.
For sure. It is not like it's state mandated, though.
Got it.
And so then when you get to high school, we actually switch to SATs and APs because that's what colleges care about. And so we switch to that, and then you have what those scores are. And then, back to our scores, we publish and we publish our aggregate scores. So every grade level, every subject at Alpha, every class is top 1%, right? And it's compared to every kid in the country. Number 2, at high school, our freshman average SAT score is 1470. We literally have freshmen getting 1500. Our senior average is above 1550. 90+% of our kids get 5s on AP tests. Now, to get 1550 plus and 5s, that's also the second time you have to work 3 hours a day. So we have a honors track, which is top 20 school. 3 hours a day, 1550 in fives. If you want 2 hours a day, then it's 1350, which is top 10% SAT, and fours and fives on your AP. And so kids, in our system, where you're giving kids lessons personalized to them, their score is just a function of effort, which is one of the biggest unlocks for motivation in the world, where in standard school, right, school performance is coded on basically two things, right? Holistically across the US education system, the best definer of your academic scores is your family income. To an individual student, the two things that it's coded for is AIQ and B, Big Five conscientiousness, which is Big Five conscientiousness is, are you a natural grinder? Right. And Big Five conscientiousness is creates mastery. When we talked about mastery being important, grinders by definition just finish everything. They're completers. And so even though our standard school system doesn't enforce mastery, they just naturally do it, which is why they crush it. Right. And without it, we all know the high IQ kids, though, who are more ADHD, not grinders, and they don't do as well in our system, right? In
Yeah.
the standard school system. And so at our school, the personalized lesson plans where you give it, where we know we can deliver 80 to 85% accuracy, takes away IQ as the determiner of performance. And I'm sure you'll be asking me about our motivation model. And our motivation model is what helps if you're not a natural grinder. You use motivation to solve that.
Yeah, we're going to get into motivation. So for me, my wife calls me a robot because I'm pretty structured. 4:25 in the morning, go to bed at 8:30, work out, kids, and so on. It seems like it's very regimented. Like it's very skills based, and it's very like, hey, focus here. We're going to go to the next step. We're going to the next step. This is a little bit of an oddball question. What are some of the things that the current education, even with its inefficiencies, kind of gets right, that the natural, like, kids messing around in class that build friendships around XYZ teacher or two? We haven't even talked about sports or the arts or any of this other stuff that makes a kid, I guess.
Yeah. So our mornings in the 2 hours, absolutely. It is very structured. You will walk into an alpha and it is quiet while they're getting through their 2 hours. Our afternoons are chaos, to your point, and we'll talk about all the life skill workshops and things like that. And it is very much a tale of two cities between the two. But learning is best done in a quiet environment where the kids can work through it. Now, the reason, and when we talk about motivation around it, the single biggest motivator of a student is giving them their time back, right? That's why we do the 2 hours, which is ed tech historically has failed because there's no motivation for the student to engage. In general, in education, 5% of people are naturally engaging in the material. 5% of the world does MOOCs, right? MIT courseware is online. Why doesn't everybody have an MIT degree?
MOOCs are multi-online.
Yeah, the old educational things where you can just go on and watch every video.
Yep.
5% of the people do it. Ed tech, if you look at Khan Academy scores, 6% of the people who engage with Khan do very well. The other 94 disengage. And so the reason for this is, when you talk about educating a student, and we're still on the academic side versus the fun chaos, is every educator will say you need two things to educate a student. One, and most important, is a motivated student. And then second, you need to put them in lessons of the correct difficulty. Ed tech does that second part very well, right? We can put them in the lessons of the correct difficulty. Now, the problem with ed tech is they think that's 100% of the solution. And the answer is it's really 10% of the solution. 90% of the solution is motivating a student, having a motivated student. And that's why when we talk about the single most important thing is having a school kids love. The second part is the second motivator of that drives that is give kids their time back. So, in my story is my first week as principal, I'm sitting down with the fifth graders, some new fifth graders, and Mackenzie, I'm principal, right? She allowed me to be the principal, and I have to deliver the 3 commitments to Alpha. The first is kids will love school. And so I ask them, I'm like, you guys love school? And they're like, no. I'm like, what would make you love school? Less school. How much less? None. And I'm like, well, it's a little light. I'm the principal, seems a little light here. Not sure I'm going to be in this job long. And I was like, look, how about this? 2 hours a day, right? Would you engage in these apps for 2 hours? Like really do it, not screwing around, spinning your chair, but really, put it in the 2 hours. If I made the other 4 awesome, if I made your other 4 hours so awesome, you do it. And they're like, that seems fair. And
Yeah.
that literally is how we weren't sure. Like when I took over
Those two fifth graders, are they legends
at
the school?
we'll get there's yes, they are. And our engineering team, I'm like, look, we got 2 hours. So you need to go read, all these papers that we knew about learning science, right? The advances in LLMs, what are we doing at, where are we building it? And that model, right, is we wake up every day. And on my first day, I have to admit, I'm like, oh, I wish I had a little more than 2 hours. Today, we're like, 2 hours is plenty, right? We actually jam more stuff in every year, right? We're exceeding our 2x learning in the 2 hours. But the time back is what matters, right? Giving kids their time back. And to free up exactly what you talk about is what's all the other stuff of learning and, right, the socialization and the relationship building, right? The team building, the teamwork, all the project-based workshops that we spend all the afternoon on. That's actually the magic of Alpha. Now, it's enabled by them learning 10 times faster, right? We have the opportunity now, right? If I show of hands, how many people really think that kids learn 10 times faster? No one's going to raise your hand. Once you're at Alpha, you wake up and you're like, wow, based on every standardized test, my kid is learning 10 times faster. As soon as you realize that, your next question is, well, how do we spend the rest of the day? And what do we want? Back to our job as parents in society, right, is to raise kids who will thrive in this world. So what are those life skills that we all value, that we think this is what kids should learn? And so this is what we get into on our life skill part, which is our third commitment, which is you will learn all the life skills that we think are super valuable in this new age. And so the first, teamwork and leadership, socialization and relationship building, entrepreneurship and financial literacy, storytelling and public speaking, grit and hard work. So we spend all the afternoons, right, where our guides and coaches, and we'll get into the teacher part, right, where they spend the day running these super awesome project-based workshops, right, on one of those dimensions. And so examples of those will be, our kindergartners in San Francisco learned how to ride a bike and they rode it 5 miles across the Golden Gate Bridge. The kindergartners in New York don't have that. So they learned bouldering and they climbed a 40-foot rock wall. And stick to itness, right? And grit, doing things that are hard. You've heard about our entrepreneurship ones, our fifth graders, either manage a Airbnb or launch a food truck, right? Austin has a great.
Is this like choose your own adventure at school?
So, yeah. So if you talk to Alpha kids, the best day is the first day of every session. So we run 5 sessions a year. And every session we change the workshops.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first day of every session, they come in and their guides are like, all right, here's all the workshops. Which ones do you want? And, what is it? Everybody has a life skills curriculum. It's called a check chart in our world, where the same way you have academics, we believe the life skills curriculum is as important or more important than the academic curriculum. And kids have to be able to develop themselves on these dimensions. And so they have check charts that they have to get through. So they're like, oh, I haven't passed the teamwork one yet. Right. So I'm an 8-year-old and I haven't passed teamwork yet. I'm going to go do the escape room. And the escape room, this last session was, we might call a key part of teamwork is uplifting others, right? And using uplifting language. So if you mic up a bunch of 8 to 10-year-olds and you put them into an escape room, they have the time of their life, right? And then at the end, you have AI analyze what percent of their language was uplifting. It's less than 20%. And they're arguing and they're fighting and they're who's in charge. It just is total chaos. right? And then, but teaching socialization and relationship building skills and teamwork skills, you can teach it, right? And so our guides actually spend the session teaching that. And for them to get, right, the teamwork and uplifting others credit, they have to go through that same uh, escape room at 85% uplifting language.
Yeah.
And so and back to it's project-based learning, they're experiential every week, right? And sometimes they even have to go multiple times,
Sure.
to develop the skills. They're going to these escape rooms, learning how to work as a team together, right? And use uplifting language.
Yeah. So life skills check, all the educational skills check. But what about the arts or like, theater or sports or any of this other teamwork stuff that,
Sure. So
we get?
let's take those. So in every session, there is a workshop that is sports. Right. So there's going to be now when you're small and you're starting small, you are not going to have the Westlake football team as your sport. But it's going to be there will be something aggressively athletic around it.
And
And we'll
remind me
talk
how
about sports after school.
perfect. How big are the classes again?
Well,
Typically?
when we open a school, we will open a school with between 25 and 50 kids. And so, uh, you know, K through 8. And so usually they actually cluster usually into 3 groups, which is you have the sort of the kindergartners, you usually have a few, you have middle school and then, 3rd and 4th grade. And so, and we group 2 grade levels together when we start. So kindergarten first, right, 2nd and 3rd, 4th and 5th, so that we keep age group together independent of their knowledge grade, right? So we have kindergartners who are in 3rd grade material, but they're not they're not with 3rd graders, right? They're with the kindergartners, and so that's one of the big breakthroughs is with this kind of system, you can stay with your social age independent of your academic. The 8th graders who are in 3rd grade, we don't put them Billy Madison in 3rd grade. They stay in 8th grade. And so, which is also very important for socialization and making sure that the kids don't feel it's a stigma to go back and fill their holes. So for us, and then on growth, the people who come to Alpha, if you're at, being in Texas, right, Westlake football team, if you're going to be the quarterback, you're not going to come to Alpha High, right? That's not it. However, if you're in an individualized sport, right, or a club sport, then you will, because what we've done is freed up all your time for the afternoon. And so we have talking about sports. We have Alpha. We also have Sports Academy, right? And so we have Texas Sports Academy. It actually this year is, if for those of you who know IMG, it's larger than IMG. It's our academics are 10 times better than IMG. Our baseball team just beat them, and our basketball team's #1 in the country. And so the reason is because we have all afternoon to train. So, for example, our Dallas basketball team, Jermaine O'Neal, the 6-time All-Star, he's the coach, right? He's the head of the school because they come in, they do it. These are middle schoolers who come in years behind, right, academically, who are catching up like crazy. Jermaine actually makes them do 3 hours academics because he's like, the same way we are dominant in athletics, we will be dominant in academics, not just athletics. And so they're crushing their academic scores. And then at noon, assuming the AI tutor has gone green, which is they finish their lessons, then boom, they get to start practicing, right? And so they can, whether it's practice or weight room or life skills. So back to designing things that kids love. If you do go to a 10-year-old who loves sports, and people who go to Sports Academy, we ask them, what would make you love school? And they're like, sports. I'm like, great, we'll do this. But then the workshops are all based on the same thing. If you try to say public speaking to a 10-year-old, he rolls his eyes. You're like, no, no, dude, post-game press conference. We got to practice. They're like, oh, absolutely. Right. And we have a deal with Austin FC where they get to go up after the game, see it, and then the reporters stay and interrogate them. That's their test to pass of you can do it. Or if you talk about, financial literacy, same thing, roll your eyes. You're like, no, no, guys, we are preparing your NIL contract. And those guys will do whatever they need to on the math side to get up to the basis and then do that workshop. And so having the concept where you wake up and you say, I need the kid to love it more than vacation. How do I tailor this to them? And so that's going to be your workshops in the afternoon there. And so these kids who generally historically haven't been motivated academically are going to crush their academics because you're not going to put them in material that's too hard, which is what they get in their standard school. You're going to put it right at their lesson, right at their level. And so they can accelerate through. They can finish a grade level in 20 or 30 hours. Jermaine's making them do 3 hours a day, right? So they are catching up at a furious pace. And so when you talk about this sports, it frees up the time, right, to do what you want. And we'll be talking about a product that Alpha's going to have, which is double your D1 odds, right? And this is week. I don't know how much you want to go in the sports world, right? But uh, if you take two equivalent athletes and one is crushing academics, right? Everybody's going to give the scholarship to the person who's crushing academics. And so it actually doubles your odds of getting a D1 scholarship. Now, there's a different problem you have, which is 30% of America, of parents in middle school, 30% of parents in middle school believe their kid is going to get a D1 scholarship, and there's only 1% that's granted out. And so you have a big gap. Now, we talk about that, and we're very clear with all the kids, which is 1% get it. I know everybody at the Sports Academy thinks they're going to get it. But as a parent, it is the single greatest motivator. So let's use it. Let's use it as a motivator. My daughter was a great example. My younger daughter in middle school was like, I am going to be a volleyball player. I'm going to be the greatest volleyball player. It's going to be great. And so she got to leave school at 2:00, right, to do club volleyball after school lessons. And so she would crush her academics to make sure she would be able to do it. And then, freshman year, she's like, okay, I'm done with it. Right. She's like, I'm not going to be able to play. And, on the team she wanted. And so then she gave it up. But I would not take away that motivation, right, in middle school, because that's what she loved. We leaned into it, and it's great. But you just sort of be conscious with them.
We're going to spend maybe 5 more minutes, and I'm going to definitely open it up for questions. We've talked about the morning. We've talked about skills. We talked about the afternoons with potentially sports and other. Do they even have any homework? What do they do when they get home?
Yeah. So this is the best part if you talk to alpha families. Now, when there's 3 times that you will do more than 2 hours a day. We taught one. So when you first come in, you're way behind to catch up. So they will have that 1 hour of homework where they have to catch up. And depending on how far behind, by the end of the first year, they're caught up. The second one is if you are in high school, you will have a third hour if you want to be 1550. And so it's 1 hour. And then the third is there's a bunch of kids who are like, I really love this academics. I'm doing it voluntarily. Right. I actually tweeted one out this morning or a couple days ago where a family's like, my kid hates homework. They hate math. And she's doing her math app before breakfast. And he's like, this is just totally incredible. She's been at Alpha 1 week. You guys are magic at making her love this stuff. Our guides, when we talk about guides, our guides are incredible at inspiration and motivation. And so we tell every parent, your kid may just go home and do stuff because they
Could
love
you
it.
explain a little bit more about the guides? Where do you find them? Why are they like so special? And what makes them different than, like, let's say, just your amazing teacher?
Great. And so, but back to that, if you talk to alpha parents, it totally changes. The kids have all day after school to do whatever they want. It's and even at the sports academy, where if you think sports kids have no time, right? And then all of a sudden you've freed up all this time where they're like, I can have a normal childhood, right? And I can be at family dinner and I can go play with my friends. I'm not just training the whole time. Same thing for alpha. There's most of the kids do not have any homework when they get home. And then guides. Let's talk about guides. So the 3 commitments we make to kids: you will love school, you will learn twice as much in 2 hours, right? Because we can teach it 10 times faster. Third, you're going to learn all these life skills that are valuable. If we're reinventing schools for the next 100 years, there's a couple more things that matter. The fourth is, what about the adults, right? What about the adults? No, our school is not robot terminators. And, there is a view, and it's a minority view, that kids just need an AI and they can just learn on their own. And that's all, schools are done. We very much don't believe that. We believe one of the things that's going to be true, a lot of things are going to change in the next 20 years with AI. We believe super strongly that in 20 years, parents are going to drop their kids off at a building. 90% of parents are going to drop their kids off at a building, and in that building will be other kids and adults. And that you need socialization, right? And kids need adults, right, to grow up, right? And our guides are key. Their key asset and how they're measured is do they deliver the three commitments to every kid, and they are experts at motivational and emotional support. Right. That is where they spend all their time. And if you think about scaling and growing, why education historically hasn't scaled, good teacher equals good school, right? You were bottlenecked on that. And if you talk about the teacher spec, right, and there's a shortage of teachers everywhere, and how do you solve this? And so when I came in 4 years ago, I'm like, okay, I gotta figure this out, right? How do you do it? And so, a teacher in a standard school, there's five things, right? It's a complicated spec, which is why it's hard to find them. First, you have to be a domain expert. I know seventh grade science, right? I'm an expert in seventh grade science. Second, I actually can't just know it. I actually have to be able to teach it, right? And I have to be a good teacher. Third, I have to be able to connect and motivate students, right? And then fourth, I have to deal with parents, and fifth, admin, right? So a complicated spec. And so in America, the way we try to solve that problem is we decide to underpay them. And then literally like, wow, nobody wants a job. Can't find anybody. Mystery. And, every HR director I've had in my career, whenever I had a complicated spec, right, he's like, well, DR, she's my HR, when I was talking about this, she's like, Joe, simplify the spec and pay more money. I'm like, okay. So we at Alpha, we do both, which is, in Texas, the average teacher makes $56,000. We pay a minimum of $100,000. Right. So depending on the markets, we do it. We double pay. Second, we simplify the spec. So in our world, you actually don't have to be the world's best seventh grade science teacher, and you don't need to know the 10,000 papers written on learning science of the most effective way to teach. But in connecting and motivating kids, you need to be the world's best. Right. And so on motivational and emotional support of the kids, that's where you have to spike. And so if you look at what an alpha guide is and talk about it, and just talking about teachers in general, all of us had one or two teachers who changed our life. Right. And they changed our life not because they marked up your paper really well. They did it because they saw you, they connected with you, and they inspired you to do something you didn't think you could do. Right? They pushed you to that world, and they supported you along the way. They didn't just press you, right? They supported you along the way. And that's what our guides do all day, right? Is they spend the time. If you think every child development expert will say the key to kids' development is that they struggle and fail on their road to success supported by a caring adult. That's the spec of our guides, which is they run that loop all day long, right? Where kids are going to challenge, they are going to fail. They are going to hit their failures fuel button, right? And their guide is going to be there to get them to success. And that relationship, right, in finding those, we had 80,000 people apply for our jobs last year. And so
How many guides are there?
across there's 700 right now. We're scaling and driving it, but so we're able to find, right, and 50% of our guides would come from traditional education background, and it is we get, because of our pay and because of this job, all our teachers, all our guides who were public school teachers, right, are our biggest evangelists. They're like, this is literally the greatest job in the world, where I get to spend my day actually doing the stuff I love, right? And connecting and motivating kids and inspiring them to greatness. They run the afternoon workshops, right? All these life skill workshops. And, during the 2 hours when the kids are on the apps, right? Instead of standing up and fronting and just lecturing, they're pulling the kids out for one-on-ones. Right. So they're like, okay, you're not going to do your 25 minutes of, language here. Let's talk. Hey, how was your weekend? Hey, how'd the soccer game go? Oh, you disappointed? How we doing on what our goals are going to be? How you getting along with everybody? And so they have 25 minutes to do one-on-ones with every
That's
kid.
amazing.
Right. And so the relationship, like the guide student bond, at Alpha, like my oldest daughter, the sophomore at Stanford, when she comes back to Austin, she's like, I'm going to lunch with Chloe, right? Chloe was her high school guide, right?
Uh-huh.
And in high school, we actually have one of the things, Dr. Yeager, back to guide design. So Dr. Yeager, Carol Dweck's protege, professor, has a great book that everybody should read, which is called 10 to 25, The Science of Motivating Kids. And, all the studies of how do you motivate kids as they move into adolescence, right? Middle school and high school. And the concept of a mentor mindset, which is the way to develop kids is that you hold high standards and high support, right? And so he designed our whole guide training and curriculum and measurement of are our guides providing mentor mindset, high standards, high support. Most parents right. Most parents are actually either high standards, low support. I throw you in and just demand you do really well. Good luck, right? You better do well on those tests. And you're just constantly asking them how they're doing as opposed to supporting them. Or parents are the opposite, low standards, high support. I never want my kids stressed, right? And that's where kids need to go through that struggle and fail cycle on their road to success in order to build self-confidence and resiliency and all of that. But they need high support to get there. And that's what our guides do. So he's designed that. And by the time you get to high school at Alpha, we actually ask our parents, do you trust your Alpha guide
Mm.
to provide the high standards so you as the parent can provide unconditional love and support? And this is just a personal one where I lived through is, as a parent, it's hard as you're trying to be tiger dad, right?
Yeah,
And get your kids there.
absolutely.
But as they hit adolescence, it's hard to be both, right? It's hard to provide support. It's hard to provide the high standards. At Alpha, I just got to outsource it, which is, I'm talking to my daughter. I'm like, can I read your Stanford essay? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay. And I just give her a hug and say, good luck. And I don't have to worry about it because Chloe, our guide, who's a Harvard grad, right, is going to hold the high standards and make sure it's great. And all our parents at Alpha, right, at Alpha High know we have a culture of high standards that our guides live with. And those guides have a great relationship with the students where they inspire them to hit those. And so the guides are the magic that make Alpha work. Um, it's why we interview 80,000 of them. It's why we pay what we want because it is critical part of our model. And it just doesn't include them standing in front and lecturing or grading stacks of papers after school. It is because they are connecting with the kids and motivating them.